We'd like people to remember that Sherry was 23 years old the day she went to work at UCLA for the last time, that she was a young girl living her life to the fullest.
She really, really wanted to make a difference in the world. She really wanted to change it.
Sheharbano Sanji, Sherry to her friends, was employed as a laboratory research assistant at the University of California, Los Angeles. She had just received her bachelor's degree in chemistry and was applying to law schools. On December 29, 2008, Ms. Sanji was transferring a highly reactive chemical when some of it sprayed onto her hands and synthetic sweater and spontaneously ignited. Sherry's older sister, Naveen Sanji, now a surgical resident at Harvard, recalls the day of the accident.
When my phone rang unexpectedly and I saw that Sherry was calling me, I thought she was calling to tell me about another law school that she'd heard from. And it turned out to be a social worker from the UCLA Medical Center who told me what happened, and I was in shock. She had deep third-degree burns to over 40% of her body.
Sherry Sanji died from her injuries 18 days after the laboratory accident.
There was a life ahead that she was really looking forward to that was cut short by what happened to her at UCLA.
Accidents in research laboratories are not isolated events. Since 2001, the CSB has gathered preliminary information on 120 explosions, fires, and chemical releases at university laboratories and other research facilities around the country. The accidents have caused deaths, serious injuries, and extensive property damage. This CSB video reports on 3 laboratory accidents. The 2008 fatality at UCLA, a death by accidental poisoning of a highly regarded Dartmouth College professor in 1997, and a 2010 explosion at Texas Tech University, or TTU, that severely injured a graduate student.
It would be a shame if not every university stopped what it was doing whenever a major accident happens, like at TTU, like at UCLA, and take it as an opportunity to examine their own safety practices to determine what similarities there are.
The CSB investigated the Texas Tech accident, producing a case study that the board believes includes important safety lessons for academia as a whole.
The CSB is concerned with laboratory safety because it's an area that appears, in comparison to industry, pretty unregulated. There is an OSHA laboratory standard, but its focus is on exposure hazards and health hazards of the research work being conducted.
University research is a large and highly competitive enterprise. The CSB estimates there are over 110,000 graduate students and postdoctoral researchers working in academic laboratories across the U.S. Government agencies and private organizations spend billions of dollars sponsoring research at university labs. Academic institutions, principal investigators, and lab workers face significant pressures to innovate, achieve, and gain funding and recognition for their work.
Research conducted at university laboratories is often on the forefront of technology and innovation. It is important that this research continues and thrives, but it must be done within a strong safety culture where preventing hazards is an important value.
On December 29, 2008, when most of the campus was closed for holiday vacation, Sherry Sanji was working on a research project at the UCLA Chemistry Department. According to a report by California State OSHA, Ms. Sanji was using a syringe to transfer a solution of tertiary butyl lithium, a dangerous pyrophoric chemical that ignites spontaneously on contact with air.
Somehow the plunger came out of the syringe barrel. The chemical was exposed to air. It caught on fire. She also had an open flask of a flammable solvent in the hood where she was working. She knocked that over. That caught fire as well.
Chemist Dr. Gillian Kemsley reported extensively about the UCLA accident for Chemical and Engineering News. using documents obtained under California open records laws.
My reaction to the news of Sherry's death was just shock. And I think pretty much the entire chemistry community was shocked.
California OSHA cited UCLA's chemistry department for failing to require appropriate body protection for laboratory workers handling pyrophoric materials. An internal UCLA safety inspection of the same laboratory just 2 months prior to the accident found that personal protective equipment was not fully utilized by laboratory personnel. Yet on the day of the accident, Ms. Sanji had neither a flame-resistant lab coat nor the much more extensive protective clothing recommended by manufacturers of pyrophoric chemicals. Dr. Kemsley believes that even a flame-resistant lab coat would have helped.
The flame-resistant lab coat would have given more time to react. It would have slowed the progress of the fire, and probably would have meant that her injuries were less severe.
And though the university said it provided adequate safety training for workers, California OSHA found no documented evidence of this.
This accident has affected the campus in a profound way, from my office to the PIs, to the chancellor and the upper administration. And we all recognized that we had to make some changes to our program to further strengthen it.
Dr. James Gibson, director of UCLA's Environment, Health, and Safety Office, says UCLA has taken steps to improve safety accountability and oversight, improve training, provide proper protective equipment, conduct unannounced safety inspections, and improve laboratory safety culture.
It's not going to happen overnight. That is something that's going to be a multiple-year process to really change the safety culture to where we think we should be.
And Dr. Gibson urges other universities to take steps to improve their education, training, and safety culture.
Once we get people to do that, we're going to see a dramatic decrease in the number of accidents that occur.
One of our main aims is to try and make sure that this doesn't happen again and that no one has to go through what we went through.
A lost life is not just an anonymous loss of life, but real people and families are profoundly affected. Safety has to be an absolute priority and the first priority for any laboratory.
In August 1996, acclaimed Professor Karen Wetterhahn was conducting research on the biological impacts of heavy metals in her lab at Dartmouth College. She was working with small amounts of a highly toxic compound called dimethylmercury. She used a mechanical pipetting device to transfer the liquid compound while wearing latex rubber gloves. During this process, she later told colleagues, 1 or 2 drops landed on her gloved left hand. Dr. John Wynn is a professor of chemistry at Dartmouth College, where he has worked for almost 30 years. At the time of Karen Wetterhahn's accident, he was chair of the chemistry department.
She was not aware that she was in any peril at the time. She cleaned up the accident, disposed of her gloves properly. Everything had been carried out in a appropriate fume hood in her laboratory, and that was that. The spill was not considered by her significant enough to report. She was in no danger as far as she knew.
At the time, Professor Wynn said, no one in the department knew that dimethylmercury could seep through the latex rubber gloves worn by Professor Wetterhahn. But 5 months later, in January 1997, she began to show serious neurologic symptoms as her balance, gait, and speech deteriorated rapidly. Despite medical treatment for heavy metal poisoning, 3 weeks later she became unresponsive and died in June 1997. 10 months after the accident.
I think we were all stunned, not only that it was Karen, a very careful and capable researcher, but to find that such a seemingly innocuous event could have led to what ultimately was Karen's death was just unimaginably shocking.
According to Dartmouth officials, Professor Wetterhahn had consulted the material safety data sheet for dimethylmercury, which advised the use of latex rubber gloves when handling the material. Professor Wynn says the tragedy led the university to emphasize the need for comprehensive hazard evaluations, rather than relying exclusively on the safety precautions from chemical suppliers.
There was an increase in that sort of safety instruction in the sense that it expanded into things that we had not realized required such care and detail, such as glove material. The fact that she was doing something any of us would have